This is changing everything as we get two prospects on the Abbotsford Canucks completely tearing it up that could change the future for the Canucks sooner than we know it. And we get a huge update on Dakota Joshua's injury that's going to make Canucks fans very happy. We're going to break down this and more later on this episode. Before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone that's subscribed. If you're part of the 75.3% that's not subscribed and you want to keep up to date on everything to do with the Canucks, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can join the Canucks Digest community. With that, let's hop straight into the first topic today, which is this changes everything. Now listen, we're going to talk about a Canucks prospect, and I'm pretty sure everyone can guess who the first prospect's going to be, and that's Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Last night in Abbotsford game, we seen Jonathan Lekkerimäki score a goal on his sixth shot. He's firing on all cylinders, moving around, and honestly, only having one goal is quite surprising on how much he has been moving, shooting, and doing everything offensively on this Abbotsford team. It's just a matter of time before we see him really break out and start having multi-goal games. And Griffin, just looking at Lekkerimäki getting his first full season on North American ice after missing the first few games of the season with an injury, what's your just kind of outlook on a guy like this so far?
I think he's presenting a lot of upside. I think obviously he is one of the prospects that we've watched the most and have highlighted the most for good reason. His upside and his potential is almost limitless. The ceiling is very high for him. We don't know what his floor is. So we're going to see that as far as North American ice is concerned this season in Abbotsford. So it's a matter of how many points he's going to put up total rather than goals, I would say, because he's a guy who can make things happen for other players rather than taking the credit for himself. We saw in his quote from after the game that we're going to get into in a second that just backs that up completely. So I think he's more of a humble guy who's just going to try and stack up the points. So this first season in Abbotsford is going to be something to watch as far as what his contribution will be with Manny Malhotra at the helm. And as far as his development, I do agree that he is getting back on a good track to make his Vancouver Canucks debut sooner rather than later. So I think this is a great first step towards doing that for sure.
And listen, I'm going to say right now, we're going to see Lekkerimäki go on a hot streak, and we're going to see him called up. It could be for one game, it might be for multiple, with the Canucks this season. Maybe it's at the end of the year if the Canucks clinch the President's Trophy, or if they clinch the top of the division, whatever it might be. And talking about the quote, which I did accidentally go into quickly, but he said, yeah, it was an easy goal, just a tap in, so it was fun. And he's talking about the goal that is playing on the screen right now. He got set up perfectly for an easy goal, but seeing him get on the board, seeing him score in his first goal of the season is quite awesome. And it doesn't really stop there, where we've seen Kirill, a defenseman with the Vancouver Canucks, 7th round pick, 208th overall, get his first professional goal in the game as well, and that was playing in the highlight clip from the beginning as well. But looking at these guys, a guy that's a top prospect and a guy that was a little underrated, drafted in the 7th round, Griffin, does the future look really good for the Canucks? I mean, you have guys like Tom Willender, DPD, the list goes on. But what's your thoughts on just the prospect pool going into the season for the Canucks?
I think it's one of the most underrated prospect pools in the NHL. We've seen on the list this offseason where they rank as far as other teams go. Everyone has them at the middle of the pack or down near the bottom. And I really don't think that's the case. We're gonna see that this season in Abbotsford and as well as in the NCAA, in the WHL, in the OHL. We're gonna see it across all the minor hockey leagues as well as in the AHL that these Canucks prospects aren't something to be looked over. They're not players that are just going to be fading out or just abounding to nothing. No, these guys are going to be stars at some point or another. It's not all going to be at once. It's not all going to be early on, but they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that it can be sooner rather than later. We saw with Tom Willender what his upside is. He's got one more year in the NCAA. We've seen what DPD can do as well. And with Kirill Kudryavtsev, he had a really solid preseason as well, where he made a case for himself as to why he should be staying within this Canucks organization, why he deserves a roster spot, and as well in training camp. So he's one of these guys who's really started to emerge ever since coming out of the Sioux, where he's someone who could be an underrated one that could sneak into a Vancouver Canucks roster sooner than some other prospects that are a bit more high profile names.
And if you guys want us to talk about another prospect, maybe it's a guy like Tom Willender, maybe it's a full video on Jonathan Lekkerimäki, which you don't have to tell me twice to do, or maybe on a guy like Fernstrom, who the Canucks drafted in the 3rd round this past draft, let us know down in the comments. But we'll hop straight into the second topic, which is a huge Dakota Joshua injury update. Now, we do get a quote from Jeff Patterson, and he says, Tocchet says he hasn't spoken to Joshua about an AHL conditioning stint. Coach said he was leaning towards just monitoring his minutes in his NHL return. to action. Now, Dakota Joshua has been out to start the season, but seeing that Rick Tocchet wants to get him back into this lineup shows the impact and value a guy like Joshua has. This was a guy that last year turned it up completely, playing with absolutely anyone. If you put someone between him and Connor Garland, they were going to work. I think Tocchet wants to get him back. Maybe we see a guy like Garland and Dakota Joshua play with Petey in the near future, but getting Dakota Joshua back in this lineup would be big for the Canucks teams. I mean, last year in 63 games, he had 19 goals for 14 assists for 32 points. We've seen him tear it up in the playoffs. He was one of the hits leaders before going down. Griffin, looking at this quote from Tocchet, just Tocchet saying he wants to get him in. He doesn't think an AHL condition stint is going to happen. What's your initial reaction on this?
I think it's something where I'm on the fence about it, and quite honestly, because I think that if you put him into the NHL right away, obviously we know he's an NHL caliber player, so putting him in Abbotsford isn't saying anything about the quality of player he is. But as far as getting him back on track to him being 110%, I think that's something where Vancouver they can't afford to lose some games, but they also can't afford to lose some games. So if it's one of those things where he's going to be put in there and his time on ice is going to be managed, he's going to be on a pitch count, so to speak, I think that's something where that could hurt Vancouver a little bit. Maybe he makes a lot of production happen within those limited minutes, or maybe he's just ready to get back to it right off the bat. But again, maybe you do one, maybe two games in Abbotsford just to get him back on his feet, just shake the rust off just a little bit, just as a formality, just so that it's not a liability, or it's one of those things where someone else has to play a lot more time on ice just because Dakota Joshua is on a pitch count.
See, I'll take the latter half of this. So when you are looking at this is the projected lines going into the game tonight against the Hughes brothers. When you're looking at this, it seems like Archie Bains is going to be the guy that gets sent down. I know he was on a 2-goal streak, scoring goals, and honestly, Bains has looked outstanding. But if they're going to move things around, if they're going to get a guy like Joshua in, maybe they put him in for a guy like Höglander, who Tocchet was not too pleased about. I mean, with the fourth line, they're not going to be playing a lot of minutes. Maybe we see Dakota Joshua come in, play some fourth line minutes. Maybe we see a double shift out of a guy like Petey, DeBrusk, JT Miller, Boeser, Garland, Sherwood. Sherwood seems like he plays most of the game anyways. But I could see the argument of getting a guy like Dakota Joshua into this lineup on the fourth line, getting him back into action, getting him moving with the team. Yes, I do like the idea of sending him down to maybe get one game in Abbotsford, but with this Canucks team, we know the chemistry. We know there's a lot of familiar faces. I mean, looking at this, Jake DeBrusk was a guy the Vancouver Canucks just picked up. Sherwood's another guy. Denton Hine and Daniel Sprong. It seems like everyone on this lineup, on each line, has a new face. So I think getting a guy like Dakota Joshua back with these guys, getting him working. We've seen him in training camp. We've seen him in just scrimmages and games and practices, leading into tonight's game. So he is getting the chemistry, but I do like the idea of maybe just getting him right back into it. Maybe the minutes restriction goes completely out the window after the first shift if he does look incredible. But what's your guys' thoughts? Where would you like to see a guy like Dakota Joshua play? Would you rather him one game in Abbotsford, maybe two? Or do you want to see him back in this Canucks lineup? And what prospect are you looking forward to the most in maybe next season or the season after? Let us know down in the comments. But we'll hop into everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. Comment to today, sorry about that, I actually did not cover this. We'll cover this real fast. Is She Loves is starting tonight versus the New Jersey Devils. But the comment of the day comes from Stephen Campbell, and he says, I would last my butt off if they traded for Zadorov. And this was talking about how the Canucks are already looking at the market and looking for more defensemen to add to this team. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to go down and leave a comment, you could be featured as comment of the day. Way down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode maybe today or tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin. Take care.